want to have this documented. So this session is questioning how we pay orienting towards needs. And we have a bunch of people with us that I'm going to introduce in a moment who are going to make this conversation possible and share their experience. But before getting into that, we just wanted to have a little feel for what is it that's in the room in relation to this topic. So I just wanted to invite you to write a little something in the chat. My question to you is, what comes up for you when you think about distributing money based on needs, and why? What comes up for you and why? And one sentence for context. No need to write a full paragraph, just to have a sense of what is it that comes up for you. What are the experiences in the room? And once you're done, you can just press enter and I'll read a few and you will get the chat as a follow-up. Here we go. Thank you. Contributions started flowing. Keep them coming. Let's see. Here we go. Equity and accessibility, strengths and needs. Excited to learn from your experience of practical application. Yes, I think that's very special. Fairness, because of justice. A bit scary. How could we get good enough about knowing and sharing what we need to make this work? Beautiful in theory, complicated in practice. Let's see what our folks have to say about this. The joy of resources going to needs as a way to save the planet. Beautiful. Requires trust and ability to be in process with each other. Challenging, unknown, maybe uncomfortable. Essential to the transformative change we need in these times. Progressive, creative, and revolutionary. Yeah, I think that there's a lot there and might resonate with the experience of our people. And thank you for this. And I would just go right away. And maybe just for context, I'm not going to explain a lot now because that's going to happen in a moment. But just for general understanding, we have a team at Greater Than that has been working on a specific project. And instead of distributing the money based on who has more experience, who has spent more time in it, who has contributed the most in any way, and based on that, distributing the money, which is what would usually happen, they do it based on needs. And they have not done this alone. They had a full team from another community we feel very close to, NGL, who have helped them engage in this process and evolve. And this has been going on for a few months. And I think that for me, what is magical about it is that it translates, and I hope this comes up in the conversation. If not, I'm going to ask you, like huge societal topics like patriarchy and deserving and what contribution means, translated into the very specifics of how much money do I get for my living and for my needs, and just completely changing the paradigm of how that is done. So for me, it's a travel from the macro to the meso to the micro. And I think that that's very special that we have such tangible examples in which we are able to understand when once we sort of flip or switch or just change the principles our system is based on, it has a huge impact in our lives. And I'm very thankful for the full team who's been working on this and that we are able to listen to your experience. So this is what this call is actually about, is about documenting what are the learnings of what you have been working on so intensely in the past few months. And I'm just going to, let's say, spotlight the team. This might take me a moment. Let's see. So hold on, Katerina, you're not going to be alone. Here we go. So let me slowly bring the team forward. Here we go, here we go. And you can share some love, maybe some like reactions or something like, hey, hands, exactly. Thank you, folks. Here we go. What else do we have? We also have Mickey. Here we go. Anyone else am I missing, folks? I'm doing. Is this all? Yes, we have also a participant that is, or let's say, what person that had an important role but is not going to actively participate. That's Tomomi. She's in the audience in a crazy time for her. So thank you, Tomomi, for being here. And thank you for your support in this experiment. So these are the humans that have been in this endeavor and that are going to share their learnings with us today. So thank you so much again for being here. And just to say that this is a super special occasion. It doesn't happen that everyone is in the same room and that we are doing this meta reflection as well. So I think it's the first time that you talk to each other, let's say the NGL team and the Greater Than team as, oh, this thing we did together, instead of, I'm coaching you or I'm supporting you or like challenging you kind of thing. But what is it that we have learned? So very briefly, I also think it's an extreme, and then you will not hear much more from me. So sorry about that. Just one more minutes about who are these humans. And I'm going to say it in a very reduced way that it doesn't make it justice, but still, I'm very excited that it's this mix of people. So we have three colleagues of mine, Elena, Stefan, and Alisa from Greater Than. And yeah, all of them super skillful. Just briefly, like Stefan, he's a wizard of facilitation, being in lots of different types of clients for 20 years, so lots of experience. Listen, an agile coach. So another type of experience. And then we have Elena, who's our sort of like sensing wizard at Greater Than, I would say. So yeah, so sensitive to everything that is happening, so articulate. So I'm very happy that all three of you are here. And then we have Katerina, who's Katerina Yanevsky from the NGL community, a seeker of path in life. That inspired me from your bio, and that you have been working on this experiment with Alper, a former aeronautical engineer, like hello, and who also built the first democratic school in Turkey and has been working with NGL for 7 years and especially working on this experiment. Thank you for being here and all the work. And then we have Julia Sherbakov, a recovery strategy consultant, helping organizations in becoming more conscious. And then finally, we have Mickey Cashton, thank you, Mickey, for being here as well, one of our main references when it comes to togetherness, as I was saying, for flipping the principles or changing them and then creating new systems. Yeah, an amazing capacity that you have. We're honored that you're here. And well, this is my intro. Thank you, folks. Thank you, everyone. Really excited. We will go into a conversation in just a moment between them. And the overarching question is, okay, what have you learned of all of this? Yeah. But first of all, I'm going to give it over to Katerina, Alper, and Julia so that they can give us an overview of what was this process about, so they know what are the different steps, what is necessary for this to work. So over to you, folks. I'll take the rest out of the spotlight and then we'll come back up. Let's go. Thank you.
Thanks. And I think we're going to do a screen share with a bit of an overview. There we go. Thanks, Kat. And I think it'll get into presentation mode in a second from the beginning, right? Yeah. All right, so welcome everybody. Really good to see you. We're just going to do a bit of an overview, and if you're walking, feel free to keep walking. Everything we say, that we'll kind of let you know what's also on the slide in case you cannot look at the screen. But I'll give a bit of an overview of these two organizations that have come together to make this experiment possible. and then we'll hand it over to Katerina, who will share a lot more about the experiment itself. So who are these two organizations? I saw some familiar faces here, so some of you may know one, may know the other, but in case you don't know both, a quick overview. Greater Than, in case you don't know them, is a collectively governed post-growth business, ushering in organizing structures and cultures, contributing to a more thriving system for all. Nonviolent Global Liberation, or NGL, so if you see us referencing ourselves as an acronym, that is what it stands for, is a mostly online community run entirely on gift, integrating nonviolence into the fabric of life through experiments focused on individual and collective liberation. And this is one of the experiments we're going to talk about. Now, on the next page, you'll see this is not the first rodeo for either of the two organizations here. Both have already done quite a bit in terms of quite radical money practices shifting from the norm. So Greater Than's done a lot around making transparent financial data and salaries, practicing collective financial decision-making, and also the Happy Money story, some of you may be familiar with it, works on a collaborative process to distribute budgets together. And NGL has also done quite a bit here on money, and really here at the heart of it is pioneering a needs-based distribution, what is called the financial gift hub. So a way to match resources to needs grounded in the principle of nonviolence. So a lot more here that we can share about both of these, but just wanted to share that this is starting from a ground of quite a lot of rich experience for both organizations. Now, on the next page, why did these two come together? You might think like these are very different. Why here? Why together? And this was an interesting, it took over a year really for this experiment to get started in full steam. And it came from a few needs that actually joined up. On the Greater Than side, there was this desire to really stretch into and connect with sufficiency and trust in life through an embodied experience and connection to purpose of what it would be like to really like stretch into what is enough. How do we trust each other in this? And on the NGL side, there wasn't actually, despite having a lot of really rich money practices, not a lot of engagement with other organizations like this. So this was really a great experiment and experience to inspire others to do experiments like this, with this broader purpose of strengthening gift economies. And if we click just one more time, we'll see that there's actually a common purpose that came together for this experiment, which is that collaborating together like this will change us to help connect to our purposes and open more fully to the potential of gift economies and inspire others to do the same. So that is also why we're here. Now, Katerina will take you more into what was the experiment itself.
So we already saw a bit who the experiment team was. We had Lisa, Elena, and Stefan, who were doing all the hard work over these past 5 months. And our experiment is actually still ongoing. We have our final month of this first phase of it happening next month. And it was based on two key practices. So we had a meeting at the beginning of each month that was focused solely on distributing the funds that the team had to distribute for that month, and then a meeting at the end of the month that was focused on giving each other recognition, providing feedback, surfacing impacts, and celebrating the work that each team member had done. And these were intentionally spaced apart so that there would be time between the funds that were allocated and the recognition and the feedback that was given, which is distinct from Happy Money story, which from my understanding recognizes the work done with the money that's distributed. And so we had a few principles behind each of these practices, which I'm sure will come up in our conversation as well. But for decoupling money allocation from work recognition, well, there's several principles, but I think ultimately it's to restore flow and to sort of realign with trust in life. In NGL, we view scarcity as one of the sort of deepest pillars of patriarchal functioning, and so to make each person's needs visible by, providing a spreadsheet at the beginning of each month and making 3 different layers of request for what we're asking for, is a move towards trust in life in making that request, making the needs visible, even if they're not necessarily all going to be met, and to grow empowerment in the team through asking. It also can lead to greater co-holding of each other's financial situations and to greater team cohesion. For the allocating money based on material needs as much as possible, this was sort of in the long term a move to uncouple relational needs, which are best met by people and not money, although they are by and large monetized in our society, from material needs. And this was more of sort of like a sliding scale move of not like, is it a material need? Yes, no, okay, we'll give funds to it, but more like prioritizing each team member's material sustainability as much as possible in the distribution. So that was the structure. It was pretty simple. And I would love for us to touch more about it in conversation with the team. It's not as cut and dry as I made it seem. There are many nuances and many challenges and many things that we did not account for in the project. But just to give you an overview, that's how the process worked.
Thank you so much. Anything else that you want to add on this before I open to process questions? Or maybe someone needs to understand something better. So yeah, now it's asking, let's say, to the audience, if you have any questions about the process, I would ask you to take a moment, write them in the chat, and I can read them out loud. Or if you have a lot of clarity, you can unmute and ask the question. And the question is about process. So not yet about what happened and did you cover your needs or how did you cover? Like, I'm curious about that too, but not yet. Let's see if anyone has any question. I'll leave just a moment. See if anything comes up. Or actually, in the meanwhile, I do have a question, some process, which was about context. So how much, I understand this comes from a work that you have been doing at NGL for a long time. How much did you have to adapt for this context? Or what are the pieces? Does it work in any context that we say, oh, we flip the principles, but yeah, can you give us some clues about that?
So what I'm hearing in your question is like we're in a different organization applying this practice that's based on principles of nonviolence that this organization doesn't necessarily hold, and like how are we adapting it to that context? And I would say that in sort of viewing material needs as a sliding scale, that's why I'm seeing one of the main ways in which we do that. Like we didn't go into individual expenses much, but we also didn't just say like, okay, we didn't distribute on material needs this month, we're not going to continue the experiment. Was one of the ways. Another way, yeah, I think that's one of the main ways that's coming up for me. I'm curious whether there's anything else that's coming up for you, Alper, or you, Julia.
There is one that like since the greater than was already making radical experiments with the happy money story, I think the aspect of liberation, like, so why can we experiment more with in a different way? What are we going to learn from that? The openness to learn and experiment new things, and some like sensing the liberation, because I've been hearing the concept of scarcity from greater than in the early phases of these experiments. And I see the context for me is being open to make new experiments around such a deep topic was there already in Greater Than Sight. And it was like a great match between two organizations.
Thank you. And just also for understanding, we're only talking about, yes, what were the needs that you were taking into the context that you were taking into consideration? Sorry. For example, were you also talking about, is anyone going to, I don't know, like inherit or not inherit? So not only, let's say, what you have in your bank account, but beyond, or was it mostly about, okay, what is it that I need based on what I have here now? So how broad is that?
Yeah, so we didn't actually account for, and this is one of the things that would maybe be addressed in the design of the scope of the experiment to begin with. But we didn't account for longer term expenses or savings or funds for retirement in what we did. It was looking at, and we did receive feedback that this didn't work for this reason, that it was specifically like for just like living expenses on a month-to-month basis. Although at one point we did open a conversation up about savings, which influenced how the money was allocated at a point in time. But yeah, it's definitely a question, I think, of the scope of the design and what you include in that.
Thanks for this. Julia, you want to say anything? Yes.
Yeah, I was actually, there's a few questions about the setup and where the money was coming from, how the team came together, what was the money to allocate, and then the spacing of the two. So I think there's a few different questions that actually might be captured if we just go back to slide 5 and then slide 7 briefly, that I think we skipped over a bit. So we can just give a bit of a quick overview that might actually cover off a lot of those questions. I don't know, Kat, if you're able to share. Thank you so much. So yeah, on slide 5, so I think 2 before this one, and right before this, there we go. Yeah, so the way this came together is actually someone said, well, where did the money come from? And this is one of the reasons that it actually took a while for this experiment to really be born, is we're waiting for a team that was working together, that had a consulting client generating enough income to distribute between them and enough capacity to really take on doing this experiment in parallel with doing a client project. So this was no small feat to actually, for this all to coalesce. And so if we click one more time, you'll see who that team is, and that's who you'll meet if you haven't met them already in a second. That's Elena, Lisa, and Stefan. That was the brave team of experiment in here. And the other part that made this really possible, and I don't think we saw questions about this yet, but if we click one more time, you'll see that there's also a whole team around this, stewarding, facilitating, guiding, coaching. So they did not do this alone by any means, because this is already quite a lot to deal with. Now, the other question I saw in here, so I hope that answers some of the questions about where was the money coming from that they were allocating. So that's where the money was coming from.
Julia,
And then
I just
if we,
wanted to,
yeah,
sorry
please.
for interrupting, just wanted to say, you can maybe talk a little bit about the one about the spacing and the different of the meetings. But I was thinking that I think that all these questions will also be clarified once we go into the conversation. So I didn't want to spend a lot of time in there. Yeah, you okay? Okay for you? Cool. All right. So
More
this is,
voices.
yes. Thank you. Yeah, so this was just, let's say, an overview. And I think that now in the conversation, many things are going to be, of course, more complex, but then also clarified. So I'm just going to bring in the team. Here we go. We have Elena has joined, Stefan, Lisa, and then we have Mickey as well, who was coaching the team. We haven't said what the role was exactly, but yes, Mickey was coaching all of them. Here we go. All right.
I was coaching only the NGL team
Yes.
plus Tomomi. I didn't have any contact with the GT team.
Yes. So this is the first time again that yeah, you meet as a team. So yeah, that's great to have you here all together. And so this is, let's say, the start of our conversation. in which we have the main overarching question: what is it what is that we have learned in all of this? And there are, I would say, 3 layers, maybe there are many more, but let's say at a personal level, the personal experience. So what were the main moments of this process for you? How did you feel? How has this process changed you? Very curious about that, for example. So that's one. Then there's the team interaction as well. So what was the interaction in the teams themselves? What happened there? And also the interaction between the 2 teams. And how was it as well that, you are from different organizations? How did you bridge that, and how did that happen? And then finally, the system, right? So what has this done to Greater Than? What has this done to NGL? Could we apply it at other parts of Greater Than? So I'll put those questions in the chat so that you have them as a reference. Again, overarching question: what have you learned? And I will leave you to that conversation, see what comes up, and I might come into the fishbowl, let's say, if I think that a specific dimension is not present, and also in regards of time. So we have about half an hour in this configuration, and in the meanwhile, while they're speaking, please write your questions in the chat. I'm going to be capturing them and clustering them, and then we will ask them to our speakers so they can address them as well. To the participants of the fishbowl, any questions that need to be clarified so you can participate fully? All right, then I'm excited and yeah, looking forward to it. So over to you. What did you learn? What have you learned? What are you learning?
I mean, I'll just start by saying that yes, it is applicable. Yes, it is possible. I think us humans are really good at making up the containers, the cultures, the practices that we find ourselves in. And so I think a lot of it for me is like, it's, yes, learning the new thing, but then also unlearning the old thing while you go.
Well, what's coming up for me is like one of the major learning. Like there's like individual content-based things, but as a sort of meta reflection, I think I'm still really staying with how much commitment to experimenting, to learning, to staying with, to also like ask for more and more support, like how much support is needed to go into this kind of edgy experimentation, even though like we have, as in I have within Greater Than, many of us within Greater Than have been experimenting quite a lot for quite a few many years and looking at a lot of our relationship with money and all of that kind of stuff. And still, it required it's requiring a lot of support, and it's getting less and less, right? The more you experiment, the easier it is. But just I'm really staying with how chunky it is, how meaty it is, to go into this stuff, even when you've been doing some pretty edgy stuff for a while.
Yeah, it was really fascinating. In the early part, when we first started, it was sort of like, okay, let's discover the principles as we go. And it was much more of a mesh between Greater Than and NGL at that point. And I found myself just getting really frustrated and said, okay, I actually need you to take the wheel. NGL, take the wheel. Tell us what to do. Tell us what days to show up, when we have to have our distribution sheets done. And this is exactly the kind of stuff that drives me crazy when clients want this from me. But I found out that stepping into something that is edgy had me sort of just be like de-skilled in a certain way. And I really did need that kind of guidance when we pivoted to that around Christmas time, holiday time, November, I don't know, January, somewhere in there. We pivoted to that mode, and then all of a sudden we could get into a rhythm of what was happening. So now we're actually quite good at the rhythm of distributing based on needs and then having the reflection and harvest conversation about 3 or so weeks later. We're very good at that now. We're very good, I know, we're very good at the mechanics of that now. Let's say that. Let's say that. And one of the things I really appreciate the NGL team for is how incisive their questions are that help us get into what Elena is saying is like the meaty, chunky part of it, like the holdbacks that we have and might not know that we even have them. If we do, we don't know where they come from. And so they help us figure that out.
Oh my gosh, yes. There's so many things I want to add, like based on what you've shared. But it's like we had a lot of support for the mechanics of it, and then I think like not even coming close to enough support for like the chunkier bits of like sort of encountering your personal edges and like what to do when that happens, and sort of like alternatives or like structures that you could lean on for when that sort of thing happens. And like just to give an example, it's like when you have like a child holding a lollipop, it's like you can't just yank the, I mean, you could try to yank the lollipop away from it, but like there's something, if you give it something else, like another toy, then it will release the lollipop in the other hand. And so I'm just using that analogy to sort of visualize, like at times we had like really solid like anchors and whys behind why we were doing what we were doing. And at times we didn't. And I think those times that we didn't, like you could just really see the gap of not having that as something to lean on. Yeah, and I guess I'm so like yeah, I have more to say, but I'll leave it at that for now.
I would like to add something brief, and overall, I will say as little as possible in this process because I wasn't actually part of it. It feels important to comment on what makes it difficult in general, not for this team, which is not human nature, which is what people so often think. It's actually what makes it difficult is that there are these deep grooves that have been created for centuries and millennia about separation, about scarcity, about fighting, competition, all of these things. And they're so deeply grooved that they feel normal and natural. So if you're going to do something that is actually, in my mind, more aligned with life, with the original way that we come into the world, it's through unilateral giving based on needs. None of us would be here if we didn't have someone who was ready to give to us just because we had a need on the most physical plane. Coming back to that is hard because there is a false sense of flow within the familiar, and there aren't that many models to give robustness to the experiment. This is the only thing that makes it difficult, not the thing itself. Yeah. When you actually get into a flow with it, it's really simple.
Yeah. I can give a specific example of that. So we all underwent like major life transitions during this period of time. I moved to another country, sold everything in the US, brought a few things over to Portugal, bought a new house in Portugal, moved into a semi-retired lifestyle. And so like my needs, my material needs kept shrinking as all of those things happened. And when we first started this experiment, one of the things that came up was that, I was very staunchly like, I am not going to work for free. I already do that in other places. I do plenty of that in the world. I am not going to work on my client for free. And so I was so staunch in that we made this guardrail that if this experiment hampers the ability for one of us to want to work with the client, then we'll stop the experiment. And we actually never reached that guardrail. And in my case, what happened was that just through the process of understanding my colleagues' needs and in being more transparent, even to myself about mine, it's amazing how many things were not even transparent to me. That we're at the point now where in this last month, I was ready to say, okay, I actually don't have material needs for this next month. I'm actually okay not receiving anything. That's not what we decided to do at the end, but I'm shocked that in 5 months, I'm ready to do that. Well, I mean, don't do bows and jazz hands, folks. Like this is, it's really, I don't know that it's all that altruistic. I don't know. It just feels, and maybe it's what Mickey's saying. It just feels right. It just feels right to do it.
And just to add for context, you said that you were doing a big part of the work that was non-redundant, if I understood correctly. So it's like you were adding a lot of value to the project. Just to add to it. Yeah, I think that was very helpful for understanding. Yeah, I see you, Albert. Just wanted to encourage more of those stories. I think that that gives a lot to chew on. Thank you, Lisa, for that.
Then I would go for maybe next question, or because mine was like, what is the learning? It's a bit like spiritual discovery from that realm. So
No, go for it. That's super fine. Just to encourage more stories as well. But we keep moving through the layers, and that's fine.
I think from the reality that, sharing each other's material needs and within the existing systems and contexts, their correspondence to money in a transparent way. Rather, what's happening rather in mainstream from the places that I know is like those informations are kept closed, and it's only individuals' business to deal with impacts, try to navigate the complexities and everything. And this itself is a separation from the wider human thing. And this is an outcome of the existing systems that we are in. And with what we did, like there was this, like as if there was this potential in ourselves, which Stefan said as unlearning, that we just made systems for that information to flow and for them not to feel it's only not your own business, but it's the group's business. Your financial life is impacting a lot about your life. So how can we increase co-holding with baby steps, with whatever possible ways? Because this is another, like we can go into a spectrum of, oh, this is scary. Like, how can I share with all my life and everything? Like, if we are not making those decisions, why do we speak about those things? That can be paralyzing. And we chose baby steps. We look at it 1 month by 1 month, and we came to places of questioning each other's, like, Stefan was not saying that I decreased this amount, but Elena was catching Stefan and asking, why are you not including this to your ask? And it was not just about Stefan trying to bring it and ask for it, but it was held within a field with the systems we made, which was quite amazing.
I would have prompted by the chat the question like, can you talk about, folks, what happened when, well, there wasn't enough to meet the needs? So what happened there? What did you feel? What did you do, actually?
What did we do?
I think this
I
is
mean,
one of the really big, like quite early on insights for me that's kind of continued to really stay and I don't know that well, maybe from a process perspective, there's never one number of need. There are different layers of needs based on like a really minimum, like this is the like the bare minimum that I could possibly survive on kind of thing. A sort of like this is I think the language is restraint. So like, you know, it's a little bit more than that, but it's not super. And then there's like a full, like, and I could do things that really would bring everything. And so you have a bit of a scale. And I think that that scale is important in being able to understand where there's also stretch and wiggle room. And I think what has really stayed with me is that what we are distributing isn't, I mean, we are distributing money, but what we're actually distributing is the stretch of when there either is, when there isn't enough, or there isn't enough to meet the needs, or there's more than enough to meet the needs, but then someone is struggling to receive, or whatever other stretches that we might be in this process. That's a thing that we are just collectively looking at. How do we do this in a way that best meets the needs that are on the table?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, Elena, distributing the stretch. And then we can think of stretch more expansively beyond just money, but also the action, like if you've done yoga, you know, that is a very individual practice, obviously, right? So if we're talking about stretch in a kind of social container, it is also quite similar. You're kind of pushing a little further, just trying to get into a different position around how you're seeing your own needs, how you're valuing your experience, how much of that you can bring in. I'd say for me, the biggest like learning moment I had in this so far was around kind of experiencing like a sense of opening around receiving that was very difficult to stretch into, like stretching myself into that space of, okay, I can receive more. With that came all of my own money stories. So in a lot of our work in Greater Than, because we use Happy Money Story, we're kind of continually coming into contact with our own individual stories about money, about how much we deserve, all of these kind of different things, right? And we have another practice, the money game experience, where we, like, through that practice, we intentionally bump into a lot around those money stories. So in Greater Than, we kind of already have that almost like a poultice. It's like it's part of the way that we're coming in. And what I realized was, oh, there's a big part of my money story here that is getting uncovered around, do I deserve to receive? Do I actually deserve that? You know, and that was for me, I think the hardest stretch to make. And I think in there, like, we're, you know, it ties into patriarchy, it ties into all of these different bigger systems that we're kind of plugged into. Because to be in that position of vulnerability around receiving, yeah, this for me was huge.
I mean, there were times when we finished a needs distribution meeting and we were like wrecked. Like wrecked. And we learned not to have a client meeting right after it. We learned that really fast, you know, because there was just processing that needed to happen in each of us individually. And then also we, you know, brought some things up together as time went on. But like, just to be really factual about it, this client never provided for all three of us to have even our minimum material needs met. So one of the early learnings I had was man, there's just such a big gap between what people need and what they're bringing home into their bank account. And now for us to see what's left, especially in a time of difficulty attracting more work, we were all, in quite a compromised position with that. And so we got to practice working with smaller, it's the same amount of money that we had before when we used the happy money story, but now it seems so much smaller because we were revealing to each other the full picture. And then I got really angry. I got like super angry at the whole system and like, why is it like this? And I know all the reasons why it's like this, but I still got angry.
That was really amazing to me, though. Like, I think in particular after the most recent months circle or meeting in which we allocated funds, that like we could walk out of it like peaceful after having not had like, and even more so than previous months, less than what was needed to cover everyone's like bare minimum request. And I think that that was just particularly powerful for me. It's like we're not, I don't know, we came out of it and we're perfectly like we're peaceful about it, and we made a decision and we all landed on something together. And that's also just something that I want to mention, is that we were going with like what y'all's willingness was to distribute funds. Like y'all were making the proposals and making the final decision.
It might be worth it to run down like the steps in the needs distribution meeting for people so they know what happens. Because I think
Yeah.
it's a good design that helps us walk away peaceful.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, so much of this is like the scaffolding enabled us to go there. It was almost like, yeah, like somebody's like holding us up, and we're like, okay, here we go. But yeah, let's do that.
Do it,
How
Steph.
should we start in?
You do it.
Me? Okay, I'll try. I'll try my best. I think, I'm coming in from the experience of being a participant in it, right? So I really want to hear Kat, Julie, and Alper as well, and Mickey too, like around kind of their thinking in the scaffolding. But as being one of those humans kind of held up and walked into this mode of practice, it was really like yeah, it was a lot of transparency, financial transparency. So a lot of like working first with spreadsheets, and bringing in everything, bringing in, expenses, debts, other flows of revenue, things like that. So there's a lot of that shared visibility. And I'm already in a practice of having spreadsheets and looking at things. So then it was for me like a matter of porting that over. And then for me, what was harder was every month going in, preparing. I thought I was doing that already, but clearly I wasn't, because because each month would come around and, oh, I have to do that. So before we would come together, a few days before, we would commit to having our sheets ready, so that we could each look at them in advance. And then we would have the session itself, and I'll skim briefly over that. Actually, I want to turn to the NGL team, and they can pepper in like more kind of the agenda or like how that was held. But in that distribution session is when we're actually looking at the spreadsheets together and discussing things and bringing questions to one another about, yeah, different pieces of the financial picture that have changed. And over the months, these have changed, right? We've seen some expenses get cut in some of our budgets and things like this as ways to try to limit, the overhead of living in different ways when there's more scarcity. So kind of transparently exploring that together in that distribution circle space. And then in similar fashion to Happy Money Story, where in that practice, we go away and individually work on kind of a proposed distribution. We do that as well here, but now we're using the spreadsheets. And so it's about kind of looking at what the shortfall is between each of us, how we can best kind of accommodate needs, and reflecting a lot, maybe 5 to 10 minutes individually as we craft that proposal. Then we come back together and discuss. And what I've found is that there's always differentiation. So we always go away and we come back with a different proposed distribution, and then there's work to land in a final proposal that we feel good about. And I'd say 2 out of the 5 times that we've done it, because we've done 5 out of the 6 that we're trying to do in this experiment, 2 out of those 5 times we've said we need to check back in on this at the end of the month. We need to just circle back to see if this agreement feels right for us. So that's that piece. As we were saying, there's 3 weeks, and then we come back together and have more recognition work, more appreciative kind of space to reflect back on the month prior, and then also to give us a chance if we need to have another conversation around what we had decided at the beginning of the month. So that's the container. I don't know if there's anything else that would help to add.
Yeah, I would say, like, after we ask, like, just check in with each person, is there anything like different or any considerations that are different from this month that you want to make known, just each person making their proposals, and then like several ways to go about it from there, like either to start with divergences, or if there's something else that really sticks out to you that you want to clarify, or just like general patterns that you want to name. And then we go into decision making from there.
I want to add something because this also starts to answer maybe one of the questions, which was one of the questions was, well, what's an example of when NGL did an intervention that was helpful? So one of the things I really appreciate is when we come back from making our individual proposals, it's actually tightly held from a facilitation standpoint at that point, which I really appreciate. And so one of the things Kat did this last time, that she was facilitating it, we had a little bit of conversation, and she's like, okay, just put your initials in the column of the one that you would go with.
Everyone picked their own proposal.
Yeah, and then we actually did pick our own, so then we did a little more work. But it was so useful to have this, like, just this sword come in and like, okay. And there, because there, for me at least, there's so much hemming and hawing and justifying, and I want to create a story around it, and I have a lot of words about it, right? But the questions that the NGL team have been able to ask us, especially during that period, have really helped me get in touch with which proposal I can go with, without all that, the pillows around it and all the things that I do as strategies to feel more comfortable when I'm uncomfortable.
I would like to add something that isn't specific to the process. It's a meta comment, and it's related to the original question, is what do you do when there isn't enough for the declared needs? And it's the distinction between finitude and scarcity. Because finitude is a piece of reality. We live in a closed system called planet Earth. The only thing that comes into this system from elsewhere is sun. Other than that, everything is finite. So finitude is a fact of life. And the scarcity is a relationship with that fact of life. And it's a relationship based on fear. And if you can have a different relationship, I'm sorry, Is the noise coming through? No. If the relationship with finitude is one of curiosity, collaboration, and trust, then this is when human brains are at their best. That's what our evolution prepared us for, is how to be creative about what was shared earlier about distributing the stretch. Because in a finite system, there is going to be stretch. This is the illusion of capitalism, is that you can not have a stretch. You can have infinite growth. You can have so-called abundance while overlooking that this manufactured surplus, this artificial surplus is what creates the manufactured scarcity that the overwhelming majority of people live in. They're not separate from each other. So it's a process of a lot of conscious realignment with evolution, is the way I would say it. I'm glad you can hear me, because I cannot hear me. There's a leaf blower outside.
We hear you well, Mickey. Thank you. I was going to ask, like, what does it take to support a team, to coach a team to get there, to spread the stretch and to tap into this curiosity and trust?
I have one piece for that. It's like we shared in the presentation that NGL has been making these experiments within it for 5 or 6 years. And through myself being in such a wider field, that the guiding value is trust in life. That trust in life starts to like we come back to life within me. So in the moments of speaking about it, this is very different to the paradigm of there is no alternative. My body knows that there is an alternative and I'm part of it. So whenever there is this scarcity or into the way, it.
Didn't hear the last thing you said, Alper.
Cut out for a second.
Whenever there is the scarcity and fear that is interfering, I can sense it because I have a growing connection with trust in life.
I think also doing things based on people's willingness helped a lot. Would you say so, Elena, Stefan, and Lisa? Like, do you have a sense that we went with what y'all were willing to do,
Yeah.
and we weren't like, okay, no, we're not doing it this way this month? I think that helped build trust, and that we weren't gonna like tell you how to, like, what to do with what you had.
I see one.
Alper, you're frozen again.
Oh my God.
Okay,
Is
back.
it okay now? Okay. Did I lose it?
It went with your internet signal.
It's gone.
It
On the
will
road
come back.
twice already.
It will come back.
It'll come back, yeah.
Yeah, from a process perspective, I just wanted to add that there was a kitchen team. So the NGL team, Alper, Julia, Katerina, and Tomomi were meeting, I think how was that, like once a week? Did you be meeting? So it's like you've been investing more or less the same amount of time, sort of, that you were with the team, with the Greater Than team.
Well, Greater Than team,
Meet
we met with them twice a month. Yeah.
once a
So
month.
yeah.
And you folks were meeting once a week.
Once a week, yeah.
Yeah, so 4. Okay, double. Yes. So
To talk about nerdy stuff.
yes, can you
To
talk a little
debrief.
bit, yes, about what was going on there? What were you talking about? And can you give us some examples of those coaching questions that you were sharing with our team? How were you also stretching them a little bit? I don't know,
Um,
making them curious? Yeah.
I mean, our weekly meetings were just kind of to debrief from what happened and to plan the next sessions. And now it's like two worlds colliding because Mickey is here, which is who we usually bring our questions to, and now you're meeting the team all together for the first time. But I'm let me think of something. Like one example,
Just a second, just to be clear, I was not part of the team.
mm-mm.
I was asked for coaching from time to time, but I wasn't an ongoing part of it.
Yeah, we touched on some pretty big topics. I wonder, like, just one thing that sticks out to me, is regarding like not having like motivation to work that we asked you about, Mickey. Like, just places where we were stuck, like how to move beyond that. And I think one of the things that surfaced there was like, what's sitting under the need for recognition, like what's at a deeper layer um for that. And something else I'm remembering from that call was um it may not even be like about the money. It may be about like decision making happening elsewhere throughout the month, and preferences being followed, um and just different dynamics going on throughout the rest of the month. That's really what like the need for recognition might be sitting on top of. But we touched on many topics in coaching calls, and yeah, I'm curious, Julia, if any stick out to you, or if there's any, Mickey, that you want to mention, um, that are kind of like, I don't know, like bigger like meta principles or questions.
Well, one thing I'll say, and actually be curious to hear from Elena, Lisa, and Stefan, and I think where someone said before, where it was like, that's where a lot of the questions we then brought to the next, whether it was the harvest meeting, the reflection meeting, but that's where in between we really kind of got to process what was happening. And a lot of the themes, I think of some of them have been named, maybe some haven't, but around privilege, around savings, around, Mickey's named the ones around scarcity and recognition. We really kind of process them ourselves also, and really try to feel into like what may have been really hard last time that we want to really support the team next time, and where might there actually be even more room to stretch, as Elena was saying, right? Like this is about distributing the stretch and discomfort, and this is not a comfortable process, but how can we support that with, and often it was also a bit of preparing some of the scaffolding, so maybe some of the process steps, starting them earlier so that you all have the information sooner, all of that. So yeah, just I think it was really kind of week by week keeping an eye on where you all were, and trying to make sure that we're holding the process to that. And hopefully that was felt, but I'd be curious also what the rest of you would say.
I also have one specific like coaching question that we brought to Mickey, and the gift that emerged from that coaching question helped us shape the container to the scope of the experiment, because there was a question from one of you about like, do I need to think about like all my expenses when I go out? Do I need to think about like, what am I buying snacks? Am I buying like, how much do I go out? And when we bring this question to Mickey, I think what Mickey you shared with us helped us to settle, because it defined our purpose of like, this phase is not about doing something else with the experiment, with the learnings. It's just about noticing. noticing what are actually happening. So the experiment is not expecting anything for you to do things differently if they are not coming from full willingness and full like exploration and courage or whatever. So I think that was a potent moment where the field landed with that clarity. Okay, the 6 month phase is noticing phase, and like keep tuned to us because we don't know if we are going to continue the second phase and what will happen. So we are just learning it and integrating the things within capacity.
I know that that settled me quite a bit when we landed on, that's what we're doing. We're keeping the structures the same unless we realize there's a need to change them. We're not going to change them just for the sake of it, changing them for an experiment. We're going to keep those the same. Our job is to notice. And I think what happened, given that framing, is that we actually did a lot. I think we've all made a lot of individual changes. But they were natural and organic. I'm not even sure I could name them, honestly. But I know that this stays with me all month long. You know, it's not just like it occurs in 2 meetings at the beginning and ending of the month. So, yeah, we've noticed a lot. What I would say.
I would like to add something, which is you cannot think about needs and orient to needs without relationship. It's not possible. And therefore, the system that we live in creates rules and norms and ways of doing things that make it almost unnecessary to think about needs. So something as simple as first come, first served. Why? Why first come, first served? The only reason I can think of is then you don't have to think about who needs what, because you have an algorithm that solves the problem. And life is so full of these kinds of things that the very process of asking the question, what are your needs, shakes up everything. It really shakes up everything. And then the second layer of what happens if you reduce your dependence on money for non-material needs. And non-material needs come in 3 varieties. There are needs related to freedom, needs related to connection, and needs related to meaning. So if you're not going to, quench those needs with strategies that come through money, you will need to care for those needs in different ways. And you can't do that without relationship. So this practice completely undermines the entire structure of modern capitalism, patriarchal functioning that is so based on individual self-sufficiency and non-relationality and all of these things. So it's at once simple and radical beyond measure. Just a simple question. What is it that you really need and for what purpose?
Yeah.
So the question that somebody asked earlier, how do you quantify needs? What housing a person needs or whatnot. There's so many non-material needs that go into framing what kind of housing I will be in. That if you get serious about this practice, it changes everything. Yeah. Done for the moment.
Thank you.
And bridging this, could you say more, folks, about the appreciation meetings? What was going on there? What were the key moments? How does it look like? recognition and appreciation, I think it was, right? Something like that. Yeah.
Harvesting.
Harvesting. Yes.
I'm so curious actually to ask you three about this one because I think we initially set it up that it would be appreciation, celebration, feedback giving, like making requests and surfacing impacts, just like as like the structure. And we did focus on recognition and celebrations, and we didn't really go ever, I don't think, into much feedback and requests and impact surfacing. Um, and yeah, I guess I just want to know, like, is that something that you would have wanted more of? Was that like a conscious choice? Did you also notice that happening? Um, yeah.
There's two things that are coming up. One is to the point earlier that Alper was raising of like, we were really trying to focus on like changing something and then noticing rather than we're having to get somewhere. In service of like the purpose is noticing and learning, we try to change as little as possible from the happy money story. So that was a very intentional design of like, how do we be really, focused in on what we're separating, which is the decoupling. And so that's where the making sure we actually had the time to do the appreciation and recognition piece came in, because that was in the happy money story, they're connected. And I think the bringing in the more kind of feedback and impact piece is another influence from NGL. And to my memory, and I could be wrong, we always had an explicit check-in on it. There was just less to bring up there. And I think that speaks to one of the other things that is around that relational piece that makes all of this possible, which is just that the relational field between myself, Lisa, and Stefan has been like many years strong and is very solid and strong. So we have our own practices of being able to raise those things more in the moment. So it was a useful little pull in. There wasn't really data there that needed to go in that space. I'm curious if either of you feel it differently though.
No, we didn't have much to say because we were processing that sort of stuff all month long.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for our practice, I'm really thankful that the three of us are, we talk a lot about the need for speed in in impact. I love that I'm getting to use that that phrase in relationship to this. But yeah, just in terms of, navigating the gritty parts of shared accountability, everyone listening, the need for speed, that's super alive, I think, for the three of us. And so we're very good at, like, when there's a tension or when there's something that's not quite, we're coming and bringing that in to our mix, like as soon as it's kind of alive in us, really, and then navigating that together. And so it could just be that maybe because we're already in the midst of that, in that faster pace, that what would come to it at the end of the month, it's like, oh well, we kind of navigated a thing earlier this month already, and it's not alive. But I did remember there was one or two instances where we did use that moment to kind of work out something, but I can't remember what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
And
can't. You remember spending a lot of time on it a couple times. To the relational question, like every time I put together my distribution spreadsheet of like listing my needs, I'm so aware of how many ways I could game this system. I'm so aware of how many ways I could hide income or overstate financial need. If I were doing this with a group of people that I were not sure were being transparent and fully disclosive, then I would not trust this process as much. It'd be a super interesting experiment to do, actually, and see what would happen, because I presume I wouldn't trust this as much, but maybe totally different learning would happen and it would be just as good. I don't know. But, I'm just like, if you have a brand new group of people who you are doing this with immediately, I don't know. Maybe NGL has done that.
I mean, I think so. I think that there are like new groupings of people that come together to do that. Like not necessarily like they don't know each other kind of thing, but maybe they've not necessarily done this specific process together. And also just to answer Carolyn's question from like an hour ago, the end of the month, they're on purpose not also reviewing the work that everyone else has or that everyone has done. Um, like in trying to decouple the monetary allocation from the work recognition.
I'd like to add something brief to this question of trusting others and all of that, which is we live in a field of mistrust. That is part of what perpetuates the practices that don't actually support humanity and are taking us to the brink of extinction. And so I don't believe we can reboot the system through individuals, kind of like there's an expression in Hebrew, my native language, making a muscle, and just willing your way through it. But when you create a field that functions in this way, then the next person that joins has a much easier time than the first three. So at the moment, we have 30 people who are part of the field that does this. Actually, it's a bit more, but never mind. Like in the vicinity of 35 people who have all or part of their material needs tied together with the gifts that NGL receives. And that makes it much easier to trust for each one of these people than when the first few start. And that is my hope, not that we can get a critical mass of people who can do it as individuals. I don't have any hope for that, but that we can create fields. And then the fields start coming together, like Greater Than and NGL collaborating. It's two fields that are higher trust than the average in modern society. To the extent that we come together in some form, we co-create a field of trust that is larger than this one or this one on their own. That's what I am kind of like holding my faith in.
I think so. I've read parts of your book a few months back, Mickey, and I want to bring in that idea of shared fate and that lovely metaphor that you're using of field as well too. If we look back at like the farmers in I think it's Spain, where they're called syndics. This is where the anarcho-syndicalist term comes from. But these Spanish syndics were these governance bodies that have existed for hundreds of years, centuries, around how to allocate water, right, between all of these different farm fields. And so there's a very like tangible, like embodied experience of shared fate in that group. And in our modern capitalistic society, we are hyper individualized. All of the scaffolding and practices around us are telling us to go about it alone, to do it on your own as much as possible, right? And so this is kind of me coming into that unlearning piece of this. When you start to let that go, you start to see, oh my gosh, we have a lot of reconstruction that needs to happen in terms of reconstructing our fields, reconstructing our kind of embodied sense of shared fate in hyper mediated situations now, right? Like Lisa and Ellen and I think we've been co-located, was it once? Yeah. When we really think about physical co-location over nearly 3 years of collaborating in this project, we came together for a gathering that we had in Greater Than a few years back. So just to give you like a sense, right, of how much we are working against in a way in the broader system. And so there's all of that going on. And then so much of that is also coming inside of you. It's already fully embedded in you. And so when you're suddenly, in my case, I'm opening myself up to receiving because that's a need that I have. In that moment of receiving, now I'm like, oh, I have to like, oof, there's like a voice from my father and a voice from my grandfather and like all of these different voices, a lot of them male, which was interesting. Um, coming in and almost like trying to say like, you can't be vulnerable in this way. You can't open up. You need to continue, like it has to continue to be you. And they were socialized into that too. You know, this is 200 years of capitalism, global capitalism, right? Or longer. So there is something extremely profound in this practice. And you know, we love that phrase, this idea, from each according to their ability to each according to their need. In principle and in a concept, yes, 100%. But then when we actually try to put that into practice in like in a very real way where there are stakes and it is embodied, all of this kind of stuff, we're bumping directly into history in our bodies, embedded in us.
Yeah, I put in the chat an article that I wrote about this, changing it slightly. Instead of from each according to their ability, I like to say from each according to their willingness. And that changes everything because nobody else can name for you what your ability is. So it moves it from somebody else decides for you what you should do to you figure out what is truly within willingness and capacity. And that's a key transformation.
Yeah, for sure. I've also just been sitting here thinking about this whole thing about being in a really strong relational container and that this relies on relationship. And I said earlier, like I wouldn't trust it if I didn't know if people were being honest. But you know what, that's not actually true. I have the skills, Stefan has the skills, Elena has the skills. We all have the skills to navigate that if it happened. You know, it's just so funny. So thank you, Mickey, for that. I was just really thinking about, oh my gosh, I'm just in this like strange alternate universe that's not even real, that says we can't deal with those situations. We have to either have a field of trust already here or we can't do it at all. That's ridiculous. We can totally create it and we can deal with it when it gets broken.
There's probably profound learning in when it gets broken as well too, right? Like ways that each individual participant in that experience are going to uncover and mine whatever is getting jiggled and dislodged in that moment, right?
Yeah.
And that's you know that, so like we're in a hyper separate individualized kind of social container in late capitalism modernity. I think of these practices around money that we've been doing as re-socializing, like the happy money story. You're bringing story into money. You're bringing like,
Yeah.
yeah, like, and each story is, and it's a unique thing, right? It's funny. It's like, it's more individual in a way, you know, like by bringing it to the level of story and to the embodied experience of navigating need in the way that we have been here, it's actually even more like unique to each person's experience, but we're socializing it together. And that's, where the container that NGL brings in helps us do, because I don't think there are humans who have the capacity and the resources necessarily to do that alone. And nor should we kind of imagine that we have to in any kind of way. So I very much also like how this whole experience is, yeah, it's like a blend between us practicing and seeing what's coming up for us and navigating that together as the three of us. And then like that diagram is so helpful. It's like there's this other layer that's vital and necessary. And so yeah, other groups should, swap out of our position and come in and experience that as well too. Don't feel like I need to hear what their process and practice was exactly so I can go and try it in my own way. No, like you have tremendous wisdom and context right here. And I believe that NGL is like trying to do more of this, right? So yeah, I want to put that there, that there's something very tender in that.
I think it was like we're still, I don't think we have, like we're still creating it as we go. Like we came up with some principles to work off of, like based on like what's going on for the three of you, like in your context. But I do believe it would likely be different. Like we would still use some similar principles, but I do think that it would probably involve different edges and different aspects. Like depending on the people. And there's a question in the chat from Micah, who I'm excited is here, who's I'm on a team with, who wants to know what principles emerged through the process, that I would love for us to answer if there were any. I think like stretching into receiving was actually one of them, that has kind of stuck throughout the time that we've been doing this. Another one that I can think of is, and I don't know if this would be a principle per se, but just something that's been like an anchor or a strong motivator to be willing to receive less, has been like not having worth defined by money, has been another one. And yeah, I'm curious, does anyone else have anything else? I think it's not like we're complete by any means in our process, but
I sort of want to look back at our documents because we wrote some of these things down, but now they've become second nature, and so I don't really remember them.
mm-hmm. I mean, there's the big one of making needs visible and asking for them, like without attachment to them being met. Like there was a few times where it was chosen to put something in a spreadsheet or to like request an amount, even though like there was no way that what was being received was going to cover that.
Ella, I wonder if anything is coming up for you. I just want to sort of like hand you the mic if you want it for anything. No? Okay, cool.
I wanted to ask you if any other principles come up. It's also super helpful if you want to write them in the chat, and we're going to send that afterwards as documentation as well. I was wondering, it's our, let's say, last minutes of the conversation. I've been scanning through the questions. I think that most of them have been answered, of course, only that's my opinion from the conversation. So if any question is still open, please do write it in the chat. Also, that you folks use the chance. Is there anything from the, let's say, NGL team that you would want to ask to the greater than team that you haven't had the chance because you were relating at a different level during your calls together? So what is there any question, any curiosity, how was that for you that you would want to ask them?
Oh, Mickey has one. Okay, I also have some.
My question is, can you truly imagine going back? Like, this is an experiment. You have one more cycle, then it ends. Can you really imagine just like, okay, that was great. We're going back to whatever it was before. That's my curiosity.
I have a visceral reaction, like immediately. There's just an embodied sense of like, no, I can't imagine going back. There's like this that's coming out here. It's like almost defending against having to go back. You know, like the idea of having to go back is something I would defend against. I mean, to not know the full picture of what these other two humans need, it would be such a loss. Like to just like we distribute based on effort and contribution, and but then I don't yet know, you know, can they afford homeschooling for their children? I mean, that's an important thing to know.
Yeah, I mean, this is it's so funny, right? Because in other projects or spaces, it won't be like this, right? So it's like there's like places where I'm going back all the time. You know what I mean? It's like I'm in one field over here, and then okay, now I'm walking back into the bup kind of world. But yeah, in our configuration, in our field, I don't think it's possible to go back because of the transparency or like the visibility that we all share now. So I think even if we were to be like, let's do a happy money story, I think we would have that awareness in our muscle memory almost, you know. But that wasn't really the question, was whether it was possible or not. It was, do I want to, right? And I think no, I don't think I would want to. And saying that, you know, I haven't been following the chat and kind of just trusting Alicia. You're in there, but I did see one just briefly there a while back around the process, how it's different between male socialized, women socialized folks. I think like the amount of internal difficulty in saying that I wouldn't want to go back is yeah, what is that? What is that? All that, is it patriarchy? I don't know. Anyways, peace back.
And I would want to, Elena, I also would like to hear from you. If you can add maybe in your answer or then complete with the others, what is the difference for you? And I have to ask this because this is also documentation for us, the difference with the Happy Money story from a team perspective, and how does this experience influence the future of distributing money at Greater Than? If you can speak to.
I was already going to touch on that. So, so I can imagine it. And I think that's one of like, I can imagine it. Is it where I'd want to go? No. I think the thing that I'm coming up against within myself the most is like, I'm feeling increasingly frustrated by the constraints that we currently have on this. So the one project, the 1 month, the like, and we're sort of pushing out of it in our dialogue conversations, because it's artificial, right? To look at only a particular set of in and out and a particular month flow. And one of the things I'm finding harder and harder is to not want to expand what this is beyond just a project basis piece. So it's like holding it in this middle thing is starting to get harder and harder to do. And I think that is one of the challenges of being in these in-betweens, is how do you, and that comes up also in our accounting sheet. So part of our lives, or a large part of our lives, is still very much in interface with the world that works on very, very different models. And so I think it's that, like, 2 feet in 2 very different world, like a foot in a world and a foot that's trying to find a plant in another world. It's that balancing act feels tough. And so it's like wanting more of my la pianta, like the bottom of my foot, to have more terrain under it in that other world, I think. And so I could imagine some more experimentation in greater than, like, with wider than just this circle, in small baby steps, in the way that we took here, right? It doesn't need to be as full or as extensive. And there's something else in your question, Lisa, that I've forgotten.
Happy money story.
Yeah, with the happy money story, I think what I wouldn't be able to go back to at all is a happy money story in the way that we used to do it, which was just this generic allusion to needs. The generic allusion to needs feels quite busted for me. I'm like, I want to have the information and the specificity, and to share it as well. And the other piece that for me has been really important is to make more transparent the consequence, like what therefore do we do if we cannot have our needs met through this? Like what is it, what bits of our lives are impacted? How do we approach that? So something about that visibility has felt really important. And I think that the, like, hiding away of that is just like, oh, someone's dealing with it. It kind of preserves comfort, but it really increases separation. So yeah.
Yeah, the including, like, impacts in the decision making, like if we did it this way, what would be the impact on you, and then making a decision based on that information.
Someone else from NGL had a question for us, did they?
Yeah, it was Tuan, and I believe it was about gender dynamics.
No, I think it was, I'm referring to one of the 3 of you. When Alicia asked, I thought one of you.
Oh, yes, I did. And I think it was kind of answered in what Elena said. I just was super curious, like, what, like, pissed you off, or like what was super frustrating. And you were just like sitting in your chair, like, oh, I wish we were doing it this way. Why aren't we doing this? Like, I just really wanted to know if there was anything like that and what it was. So I did hear like a answer from in what Elena, you just shared. But yeah, if there was anything else, I would love to know. Because it might even be what we were also thinking. Who knows?
Well, what has pissed me off is not what we're doing here, but what it's revealing to me about the system that I've been inducted into and unconsciously operating in for so long. And I mean, I'm in my mid-50s, and so I'm just sort of in this time of life moving into more of an elder position. And so I've actually been, like, very successful in the game. You know, I accumulated a lot. I can do a lot of things because of that accumulation. I have a lot of comfort in that, and I know that that just by the happenstance of my birth and the timing and my parents and their struggles to become more financially secure and be able to send me and my brother to college, like, I know all of those things were important in being able to create this. And none of it happened by itself. All those things happened because there was lack somewhere else.
Mm.
You know, and so coming to terms with that is going to be an ongoing issue for me for a while, I imagine.
We're all in a hedging posture, which is strange, right? And by all I mean like it feels like humanity in general. It's like we're hedging like what's going to happen in this system? Is it going to collapse and transform in some way? Um, and so I really, in experimenting in this way, I really feel that it's like, okay, hedging in this direction, right? Of like what it looks like to re-socialize all of this. But like as I was saying, I then have to walk over to another field, which is like hyper individualistic, to satisfy, the gaps in the balance sheet. Yeah. And that middle, it's like we're living in the meantime all the time, it feels like sometimes.
Hmm. Hmm.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Julia and Alper, do you have anything you want to ask? Now is your chance.
Yes, exactly.
But there was this moment in the last distribution circle where it became like we were laughing and there was flow and there was also humor. And I heard Elena, you said that, wow, like after all those distribution circles with like serious, intense, all those impacts, whatever, now first time that you're experiencing this humor and joy and flow. And I was curious about like what made it possible or anything you want to share about it.
I think there's a lot of different factors. Part of it, I think, is that whenever you're trying something new that is still edgy, like getting some reps in with the mechanics so that like, yeah, I think sometimes there's just like almost a mechanical piece there. And also it is confronting, right? To look when you're in a world where you're not seeing the fullness of something. And in some ways, I think this is part of what the Happy Money story, for all of the wonderful benefits that it has given us, keeps us in a bit of an illusion around, is like everything is fine. We're all happy. Everything is great. And we're not seeing where actually there might be some massive impacts that we're actually not getting an insight into. And so I think in the early pieces of this, it was quite confronting to be like, this is the reality that we're in. And I think that over time, we built the capacity to look at that and to look at that together and to still move through that. And so I think that has been a really big shift. And so it's like almost, it's always, or at least in my experience, whenever you have these, there's always that moment of like, oh no, before you're like, okay, great. And to expect flow immediately is not a very helpful expectation to have. And also I think that I think seeing the bits that have that where we are expanding beyond have also really contributed to that flow. So like like we're maybe it's some of what you were starting to name, Mickey, around like human creativity when you see finitude actually unleashes itself. It's like, oh, like here's this, but then here's this other thing that we're in together that maybe we can pull into that. So it's like you get into that space and then that's exciting. It's like, great, what can we do with this? How can we support each other in that interconnection rather than how do we just make do with what is here? And I think that was a big shift for me in this last circle. What about others?
I remember the laughter, but not what it was about, or like just a moment of ease.
It was the counter proposal for Ellen not being willing to let you go down to zero quite just yet.
Oh, right.
You were ready. Stefan was ready, and then Ellen was like, "No, not yet."
Yeah, we laughed about that.
Yeah, I would just want to invite any of the seven of you, if there's anything that you say, "Ah, I really would like to share this, or this was a moment, or a learning, or I have a longing, or anything that you want to leave us with before we close."
Something I'll add, and it may be a question for the rest of you as well, is how to talk about this with other people who are not in this world. And my way of dealing with it is I started writing a blog. I've posted on my podcast. In the chat, I put a few links to the blog, but I've really just even being just part of the coaching and observing and support team, I've really struggled to really internalize and process all of the things they're bringing up. It's not even my money that's involved here. And yet, like, I would like it to be. And yet, like, I'm like, oh, who could I do this with? So I'm kind of putting it out there in the world, but I'm also really curious, like, how to bridge that gap. I know a lot of folks here are a little bit on the edges of it, but also how, yeah, like how to talk about this is a thing I'm still struggling with.
We're not looking for the answer to the question. It's like, what do you want to leave us with? Yeah.
I also want to leave us with there is also this nerdy facilitation perspective. Like, how was it to facilitate all of that? Like, from what Lisa, you pointed, like, from the moments that you bring your proposals, there was like a very tight facilitation around you. So how does it being like, what skills, what moves, what vision, whatever, like, there's a lot to unpack, but we didn't go into that today. But for the ones who are interested, and for the ones who have the pull to learn more about that, I think the kitchen team is very excited to share what we have gathered.
I have something I want to share, which isn't actually about GT or this team. It's about the overall thing, which is, and it I think relates a little bit to what Julia just said. It is actually possible to play with this, not just in the context of a team or people distributing money. Years and years and years ago, I started playing with this when I would be, for example, with a group of people at a restaurant. You know, when the bill comes, everybody starts thinking about what did I order and how much did it cost and doing all these calculations. And I developed a practice of snatching the bill before anybody looks at it and saying, don't worry about how much you ordered. The total is this amount. Just put in the center, how much are you in this moment up for giving? And then we see what happens. And I did this, I didn't go out very often, so it wasn't a very frequent thing. But whenever I did this, I think about 80% of the time, what came from people was more than the bill. And we ended up giving the extra as tip to the people who are generally underpaid. And about 20% of the time, it didn't add up. And then I would say, okay, so we don't have enough. Is anyone willing to give more? And then somebody would be willing to give more. And people let go of how much did I order? And no. And it's like a micro thing. And you can do this creatively in all kinds of situations. So I just wanted to leave that little inspiration.
I think I want to leave folks with a caveat. The major caveat is, okay, you've come to this session, or maybe you're listening to it later asynchronously, and you're thinking to yourself, I I'm learning all this and I'm catching all this experience from these folks who've done this thing. And so maybe what I'll do will be something similar, or like I'll have more certainty if I do something similar as a result of having heard all of this. And I would say lean on NGL as like navigation support in this. I think we have this tendency, we go and we pick up, I know this will be left on a YouTube channel, right? We have this tendency to go and listen in on a thing and then feel like, okay, I've got the process or the hack and I can go and try that and I can do it on my own. And I'm sure that that's possible. I'm sure, of course, that's possible. But I think part of the unlearning as well is like recognizing that there is already a field of practice. There is already a field of context and knowledge and wisdom that already exists in this political economy of the meantime that we happen to be in, and go and find it. It's here. NGL is here. We at Greater Than are here to like talk about our experience with it. It's You're not alone, I think is kind of my message. Don't come at this as if you are alone, because I don't think that that's true. And also that this isn't new, this is ancient.
Mhm.
And also present in a lot of non-Western cultures.
Yeah. Nothing more for me.
Just giving you a last moment in case anyone wants to share anything.
Yeah, just one really small thing that keeps coming up, which is there's a lot of similarities in many parameters between Lisa, Stefan, and I. And there's also a lot of differences in terms of our social locations, our class backgrounds, and whatnot. And so I feel like there was a few threads that I heard in the chat of like, oh, but does this only work with people who are really, 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 really similar in their typologies? And my hunch is within, so there's only so much of a difference that we have. We're all within a particular set of means, but my hunch is that no, if there is that relationship, because what matters to me is the person. It doesn't matter to me that I don't care if they're spending similar amounts to me or not. I care that their needs are met because I care about them. And so I think if there's that, these questions that often come up of like, well, how do you manage it if someone wants to bring a Ferrari? It's unlikely that or if it is, it'll be really important. I don't know. Like I feel like those often these hypotheticals come in and they're so ungrounded from the actual reality of how you live a life with someone that is in your life on a regular basis. So let go a little bit of those hypotheticals and just practice it out.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So we are celebrating all of you for embarking into this and supporting, and everyone that was here, including Tomomi, who couldn't join us in the live conversation, who made this process possible. Just sharing some resources. I'm going to maybe, let's see if I can unspotlight all of us and we go for a second into gallery view. I would have a quick request. If you could, can we quickly just write, what is your takeaway for each of you still in this session? What do you take for yourself? What is your learning? Anything you want to share? And so we'll have it documented, harvested as well. And as you're done, you can just press enter. And we'll see the little dots of knowledge that have been gathered through the session. Keep them coming. Thank you. We have joy at the vision and the practicalities. we have someone who we phrased his trust in human species. Awesome. What we achieved into ours. Amazing. The difference between infinitude and scarcity. Possibilities for co-resonance. With a growing awareness for how it's almost impossible to go back once we've awakened and stretched into new possibilities. Beautiful. Willingness to experiment alike with collaborators. Urge to experiment. Got around by Marco, relational field and willingness to experiment. And I just wanted to leave you with a few resources if you want to continue this exploration. Again, you will receive this information in the chat, in the follow-up email. The case study that we have, let's say, I think especially Julia, written about this experience with collaboration from everyone. You can connect to the different speakers as well. The NGL website, you have it. And there's also a request. NGL are meeting soon, and there's a GoFundMe to support that happening. So if you want, if you can, please join the link and support that, or maybe you want or you can send it to someone who could support that. So please do that. And to continue the exploration, we also have the private networks course in which we talk about a lot of these topics. Find the links in the chat. The case study we have on the Happy Money story as well. So you have another, let's say, system. That's the one that we have been using at Great Sudan. And it seems that we're going to modify it or take a new road, or let's see, exciting to see what's happening next. I just want to thank everyone for being here, and special thanks again to our guests. Miki wants to say something. Yes, go.
1 second, which is this gathering is the very first time ever that all the people who are core to holding NGL are going to be present with each other physically. So it's quite a historical moment for us, and we are still a few €1,000 short on the expenses.
Yes, but also what I saw almost there. So yeah, if you want to help support it, then please do that. And thanks again. And yeah, let's see what happens with the experiment and future experiments. You can unmute and then say goodbye and see you soon, folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
all.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
All the best to everyone. Thanks, folks.
Thank you. Good night. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Gracias. Bye bye.
Gracias a ti. Chao. Sí. All right. I think we still have. Yes. Thank you, folks.
Anissa, do you want to stop the recording?
Yes, I will.